Hey, everybody, welcome to our episode 10 of Beyond the Weight Room podcast. You have me and Ryan Hurston here hanging out. Today, we're going to have a little bit of something we like to call Just the Tip Tuesdays. Just the Tip Tuesdays with Brett and Ryan, brought to you by Schnucks Tangerine Sparkling Water.
What was the last one? Like lime sparkling water?
Yeah, lime sparkling water. That's
it
pretty much half
could
my
be called
refrigerator.
Tangerine Tuesday.
Tangerine Tuesdays. So today we are going to just basically spitball some just thoughts and ideas about breaking into the field as a young coach, young strength and conditioning coach. Me and Ryan obviously went through that ourselves. So just things that either we saw that helped ourselves as a young coach, or things we saw young coaches do that in our minds kind of excelled them to whatever that next level might be. We don't know what each other has in mind. So this is going to be, legit, just off the cuff, little conversation here, which will be good. So I'll kick things off if you don't mind, sir.
No, go for it.
So my first thing that I think helps or helped me get to where I was with strength conditioning, or am, or whatever you want to call it. I'm a desk jockey now, but was just networking in general. So overall, I think the coaches that build those relationships with other coaches inevitably are going to get more job offers, because at the end of the day, when we had people applying for jobs or internships, like you get to that final round of 5 applicants, 10 applicants, whatever, like most people have enough experience to be doing that job, right? So you get to that final round, and which is what your experience gets you to. But once you get to that point, a lot of times it's like, all right, I'm going to be around this person every single day because I'm working with them. Like, who do I actually enjoy being around? And I think my athletes will enjoy being around. So, that networking piece is huge, because if they already know you, if they already coached with you, they're going to, more likely they're going to give you a bigger shot than somebody they don't know. Right. A good example of that is our former intern, Elmo, here at Exos. He started with us as an intern. We had a position open up about a month after he left. He definitely didn't have the most experience, but he was a good coach. He really cared about his athletes. He had good communication skills with everybody. He vibed with our whole team as well. And so when there was an opening, I even told Dave, I was like, if somebody's going to want this position, they're going to have a shitload of experience for me to give them that edge over Elmo, just because even if they have a lot of experience, I don't know how they work, right? So I think that's a huge piece of things.
Yeah, I have that. You have to introduce yourself to as many people as possible. That can be hard for people who might be intimidated in positions with people that are higher, lower, whatever, especially if you're working with athletes. Introducing yourself to the coaches, introducing yourself to the parents, if that's the case with youth athletes. You have to be approachable with relationships. If you're very standoffish or you look like you don't want anybody to approach you, that's a very hard way to have good relationships with people. I know I struggled with that early on, because sometimes when you're getting into the field, like, you're solely focused on the job and you're not really focused on how can you reach out and branch out to other coaches, whether it be, in baseball, my example is like reaching out to hitting coaches, talking to the hitting coaches, talking to the pitching coaches. Like, sometimes you get so in your lane and you have your blinders on that you don't realize that if you just make some of those connections, they might know somebody that can hook you up with something if you're trying to get there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, coaching can be taught. Relationships and having feel for how to have those relationships is something that's innate.
I think it can be learned. It just takes time. And comfortability is probably part of it too, like you said at the beginning.
Yeah. Right. Sorry, I might have misspoke. I mean, coaching can definitely be learned, but I think that is not as high as a priority as knowing how the work ethic aspect is, and then, like, are they able to carry on conversations with people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I right when you started there, you were talking about obviously the parents, the coaches, all that stuff's huge too, but don't undersell the value of networking with your own peers too, because inevitably, especially if you're a young coach, those people around you, you don't know what positions they're going to inevitably get into, right? And there's so many former interns I've worked with who now have higher positions than me, and it's just a good contact that I could have if I have somebody that's working with me that's a good coach. Hey, one of my former interns that I made a good connection with is now working here. I can give them a call and see if there's any positionings, that kind of stuff. So we've all been on both sides. At least I know me and Ryan have been on both sides of the hiring process, and you see how it works on the strength and conditioning side, where a lot of times you kind of have somebody in mind, but you still have to put that posting out there. And it's like, somebody's got to blow me out of the water to get this job because this other person I know, and I know what I'm going to get, and I know what their weaknesses are and how we can support that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Because everybody's going to have weaknesses. It's how do you build those up while you're going through the process?
Cool.
I think one for me that really stands out for young coaches is understanding that the schedule is going to suck at first. Whether you don't have enough hours, you're working the early shifts, you're working the late shifts. Like, it's top-down priority. Like, the people at the top are going to get the allotted hours that they need to do. They're going to work the prime hours, especially if you're in like a private sector. Understanding that you might have to wake up at 3:45 in the morning and open up the gym at 5 and work those first couple, 5 to 8 shifts. If you really want to be in it, I told myself when I first got into coaching at 18, like, give it 10 years to see where you're going to be before making a decision. And it doesn't need to be that specific timeline, but like, you can't expect to be where you want to be in a year. It's just not going to happen. You have to be able to work 60-hour weeks, 70-hour weeks, work Saturdays and Sundays. Because at the end of the day, most coaches are at the beckoning call of the people they're training. Like, in what time do people typically train outside of their work hours? You're not typically working 9 to 5. You're working 5 to 9 and then 5 to 10 on the back end of the day. Like, your schedule is going to be opposite most of the times of people who work day-to-day jobs.
Yeah, dude. And then even in the team setting, like, what's you tell them what your schedule's like in season, right?
Yeah.
Do you work 9 to 5 in season?
No. My schedule, so spring training right now, like ramping up into spring training, I get up at 4:00. I get in 4:30, 5:00. I work out for an hour and a half. Our meetings start at 6:00. We work 6 to, gosh, I don't know. When the game's over, 4:30, 5. If there's a night game, you work until 7:30, 8. Like, they're long days, 14, 15, 16-hour days.
And then in season, it's like you're nonstop going. And even like when you're off, if something happens with an athlete or whatever, like, you're always on call.
Yeah. I mean, in season, it's wake up at 8, be to the field by 10 so I can get my lift in. Guys start coming in at noon and you're working till 11:30 at night.
I'll be honest, that was something that did like kind of scare me going into baseball. Like, when I was coming from an internship that was, the ski team, they have a good setup, and it is very, like, in the off season, at least, it's very much like kind of like a 9 to 5. Like, people come in, they train the times they're supposed to, and they head home. There's no snow for them to like go do their sport. So that's pretty much all they do. So they can kind of get it into that window, which is nice. And I was going from that to going into baseball, which, like we said, is kind of like pretty much all the time for 6 to 8 months. And that was definitely something that like I was nervous about, but once you get into it, you kind of get into that like mindset and you get into that grind, and it doesn't feel as bad. Everybody's kind of in it together too. It becomes like a little bit of like a family. So it's not as bad as it sounds from the outside sometimes.
No, it isn't. I mean, like you said, you're with these guys every single day, except for one day a week, and you might be traveling on that day.
Yeah, you're in a bus together.
Yeah, you're with them pretty much straight through for 6 to 8 months. So everybody has their own clock. You kind of understand when guys are going to come in based off what they have to do for the day. Like, you get very, very close with these guys. Somebody I work with, he told his wife, he's like, I see these guys more than I see you sometimes. And that is true. That's something to understand, is like the family life of being a full-time dedicated strength coach, especially in baseball. I'd assume other sports are probably pretty similar, is you are with these guys or these athletes a lot more than your family.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's one reason I got out of it. But I enjoyed it while I was there. Just long term, I knew that wasn't going to be for me. And I think as long as you can be honest with yourself, there's no right or wrong path to go down, right? Like, the private sector I jumped into because I didn't want to travel as much. And then I got an offer to work in a general manager position and basically kind of make up some of my own hours and work closer to a 9 to 5. And I'm like, that was the first time in almost 15 years I didn't have the early mornings and the late evenings of training. and it's been nice, but it comes with its own stuff. So whether it be like increased stress from having to run a bunch, be in charge of a lot more, or whether that be almost the downside of making your own schedule is there's some nights where I'm literally up until like midnight, like on my laptop, like just doing shit because I can, right? And I have that mindset of I want to keep going. So I think as long as going into it as a young coach and you're accepting that, that's probably the biggest thing, because too many people will get started and they like want that, like you said, 9 to 5. You're like, bro, this is not fucking a desk job where you're working 9 to 5. Like if you don't know that going into it, then I don't know what to tell you, man. You got to find a different position.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when we worked together, I would do full-time hours plus some, just because that was what we needed. There were 2 of us at the time. And then if you have personal clients, you're working with them on the outside of that. Like there's so many
Side
times.
hustle.
Yeah, there's so many times you work a 12-hour shift and then you go and also do 3, 4, 5 clients after that. That's just, if you want to make a living doing it, like that's one of the ways you can do it. And I think, you're in a position now where you're able to make those decisions, but very few people are able to just jump into a role that you have without the background of putting in a lot of hours over quite a few years to get to where you're at.
Yeah. And honestly, they took a leap of faith on me in the first place with the general manager position, because I had all coaching background, a coaching record, right? I had no background of like managing a business or fucking doing marketing or anything. And, obviously ended up working out. So that's, for whatever reason, good, I guess, for them. So, and for me. All right. Number 3, I got written down. I wrote coach more. So what I mean by that is the amount of young interns we'll get in, sometimes even like coming from grad school, that have almost no coaching experience, is mind-boggling to me. Mind-boggling.
Bottle the mind.
Bottle the mind, yeah. And I think so many of them think that they need this like specific coaching experience to get these jobs. And I know for myself, if I get like resumes, they could have, the master's on there, this, and this, but they have no coaching experience. I'm like, bro, you want to be a coach and you've never coached anybody? Like, I don't care if it's little league or elderly badminton, like coaching in general is going to get you better at your coaching cues, at changing the things on the fly, at, just all the things that make you a better coach in general. So if you're not putting yourself out there to be a coach, that's something I would definitely recommend going out and finding places you could do that. There's plenty of teams that would let you do coaching for them for free, whether that's actual strength and conditioning or whether that's like on the field coaching, where you're still going to be practicing a lot of the same tactics as a coach. So I think that's another huge thing I see young coaches when they're coming in.
Yeah, learning your voice, right? Like learning how you communicate. We have a couple interns right now, and they're working through, how do you speak from your stomach? Like how do you vocalize yourself on a line with 50 people lined up at once, and you got to yell to someone that's 25 yards away, but not just be screaming the entire time? Are you saying too much? Are you not saying enough? There's a lot that goes into how you coach. I'm a big proponent of say as much as you can with as few words as you can. New coaches, and I'm thinking of myself when I was in that position, you almost want to over-explain everything. You want to make sure that you're 100% getting across the message. Well, when you just talk, number one, you never give the athlete the opportunity to say anything back or rebuttal or give their thoughts. But also, like, if I just talk to you for 5 straight minutes, like at some point throughout that, like your brain's just going to go somewhere else. Like it needs to be clear and concise, and you have to learn how to do that. That's not something that just naturally comes to a lot of coaches.
Yeah. Yeah. That coaching voice, that's the big thing, man. That so many, I mean, myself too, but so many interns, I think it's a confidence thing though, too. Like just getting in front of people sometimes is scary for anybody. And looking back, I don't know how I did it as a young coach. Cause I was like, I used to be terrified of public speaking. It's still not like, I feel like nobody really loves it. Well, somebody probably does, but I don't really love it, but it's gotten better because I now just go in there and I know the information and I have like bullet points on a piece of paper. Same thing with coaching. If I have a class I'm coaching or something, even now, if I'm taking over a class, I'll have the workout and I'll just have like a couple things underlined or like highlighted. And like, those are my main points I'm hitting on. I'm not going to read the entire script, try to memorize how I'm going to say stuff. It just comes with time. the more you do it, the more you're going to be able to change things on the fly and just be a better coach, which I think is the biggest part, is the adversity piece.
And it's okay to like write things down when you're first getting into it. Like nobody expects you to be perfect and memorize everything. Like that takes
write shit down now, man.
Yeah. Like it's okay to have a note card when you go out to stretch so you remember the order. I'd rather have that than you go out there and forget and mess it up. Like just be confident in what you're going to say and why you're going to say it. Like if I always think like if a guy asks me a question and I can't explain it to him like they're 5, I should probably look into it and have an answer for the next time they ask that. And it's okay to say I don't know. It's okay to say I don't know and I will get back to you, because that means a lot more to somebody than just making up a bullshit answer.
Yeah.
That shows some humility in the fact that you don't know everything, because guess what? We're just like anybody else. Like we don't have the answer to every single thing. And trying to come up with a reason on the fly is more times than not going to lead to an incorrect answer or an incorrect response.
Yes, sir. All right, we're at number 4.
Number 4, I think this is kind of a two-parter. Like you have to listen and observe people who have been doing it longer than you. I think the best way to learn is observation of those coaches that have been out on the floor for a long time. Watch where they stand. Watch how they communicate with athletes. Watch when they talk to athletes. How do they approach them? There's a lot that you can learn just from watching somebody who's been doing it for a lot longer than you have. I still learn to this day from the guys that have been in positions that I want to be in. The way they handle themselves and they carry themselves and the demeanor they have when they're out on the field or on the floor is something that I'm always trying to do. The point of coaching is not to be in somebody's face all the time. It is to help them get to where they want to go. And sometimes that means letting them figure that out on their own. Sometimes it means correcting things a little bit more for them. You have to learn who the person you're working with is and what they respond to best. Some people like, pulling them off to the side and talking to them. Some people like when you talk to them in a group. It really depends on the situation. But, watching where these people are at in their careers and how they got there is super important. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying. Like when you first start, like you solely have the blinders on of, okay, this is my mission for today. This is what I want to do. This is how I'm going to do it. And you lose sight of everybody else in the interactions, especially in the craziness of a room of 50 athletes. Just take a step back, watch the other coach, see what they're doing. Because we can all pick up something from somebody else. Some people are really good at coaching techniques. Some people are really good at programming. Some people are really good at the relationship standpoint. Like, what can you pick up on? And that comes down to being self-aware of like, what do you need to work on the most? What do you need to refine the most? What are you really good at?
Yeah. I know when I was with the ski team, one thing we did with our interns, and we did it with ourselves, was we filmed ourselves coaching too. Do you ever done that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's super beneficial, because you can look at what other coaches are doing, but sometimes it's hard for you to like realize what you're doing. Like, and people can tell you, but there's just something different. Like when you coach, and you can just like, you can almost pick up on what the vibe is that you're putting off without you potentially knowing. Like I always see like coaches with their arms crossed and they're sitting there and just like wide stance or something, which I used to do like a lot as well. And it's like, you don't look approachable necessarily. I mean, there's a time maybe where it's more intense and you're trying to get people to like, get after it, lift heavy, whatever. But like, if you're always sitting like that, it doesn't, your body language says something, right? And it doesn't look approachable. And if you film yourself, you can get a better idea of kind of like how it looks when you're coaching, which it might sound stupid, but it matters.
And it can also come down to what you're saying. Like I remember when I first started like doing some videos, I would always end my sentence with a, or an all right. So, like that, right? Like you just want to say, yeah, and this blah, 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 like you're asking for validation to the person you're talking to by putting a question at the end of something that doesn't need to be a question.
Mm-hmm.
The quicker you can pick up on that type of stuff, the quicker you can change that for the better.
Dude, it reminds me of, you pointed out, we were recording a bunch of videos during COVID. I remember you pointed out every time I started a video, I would like clap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, hey guy, like, it's like I'm doing the fucking director thing. And I still to this day, Like I'll sit there, record a video, and I like notice I do that, and it like just fucks me up. So thanks for that, Ryan. I immediately have to like delete it and restart.
Also understand, like, putting yourself on camera is pretty uncomfortable for most people, especially when you start. You're gonna dislike a lot of things more than somebody who doesn't know you or somebody that's just working with you sees. You're gonna see those little nuances of the things that you're saying that you can pick up on that might go unrealized to everybody else. And if that's the case, okay, work on it. Like, how do you want it to be presented? Because everybody wants to put out a good presentation, because coaching is a lot about presentation. So how do you say what you need to say, get your point across efficiently, and make as few mistakes as possible? And also realize you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. Like, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has those days, as Miley Cyrus once said, or Hannah Montana.
Hannah Montana said what?
Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has those days. Everybody knows what I'm talking about.
I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
It's a song.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. Is it a Hannah Montana song or a Miley Cyrus song?
I think it's Hannah Montana. We'll have to go fact check that.
All right. We'll fact check it at the end. We'll put it in the notes. For me, number 5 was I just wrote communication in general. So like communicating, it kind of goes in point with the networking thing at the beginning, but really what I meant with the communication was like communicating and building relationships with your athletes. And it's great to like learn how to be a coach in a book. And you see the sets and reps and like what everything's supposed to happen in a perfect world, but we know that's not how it is 90% of the time. So building those relationships is a cornerstone to being a good coach, because that athlete needs to feel all right to come up and talk to you if they do have things going on, and they trust that you're going to do what's best for them. So again, for me, I think that's another huge thing is just learning how to communicate effectively and build the relationships effectively with your athletes.
I see this a lot with new coaches. They come in from whatever school they've been at. They've read the books, the exercise physiology books or the coaching books. And when they see what actually takes place, they're very inquisitive of, why do you do that this way? It's like, well, what's taught in the books just doesn't work like that in real life. We're not looking at specific, I'm not getting out my goniometer and looking at specific degrees of knee flexion. I'm not putting myself in positions to look at that type of stuff. I'm looking at, are we being able to get the stimulus? If we have 50 guys out on the line, how am I getting them their work to rest tempos at where they need to be? I had an example today where I had a bunch of guys sprinting. I was doing a ready, set, go call. Guys were reacting to that, and some guys were jumping off too early or going too late. And at the end of that, it was, hey, here's how we're going to handle this in the future. We're going to waterfall our start. So the guy in front of the line is going to go, and that's going to kind of dictate the pace for everybody else. Understanding that you can learn from what you did in that moment and realize that, okay, I'm going to finish through with what I started, but then the next time I go through it, I'm going to change it up. It's okay to do that. And you can talk to other coaches or athletes and see, hey, did you like that? Is there anything that I should do a little bit differently? Because your idea to you might make sense, but when you have a group of 20, 30, 40, 50 guys out there, like, shit can hit the fan and you have to adjust. And you have to pick the point to adjust, because it's critical to adjust on the fly, but if you make this 180-degree turn in the middle of everything, all that's going to do is confuse people even more. So finish through what you started, reassess the situation, come back to it the next day, and then make the change.
Yeah. Yeah. I think with the communication piece too, like for me, I know like monitoring has gotten so much more popular. Like I'm sitting here wearing like a Whoop band. You can look at HRVs and, whatever you want to look at and everything. And all those numbers are great. But at the end of the day, if I have an athlete, their numbers could say everything's great. And if they come up to me and I trust them, we have a good relationship, and they're like, I feel like shit, coach, or this hurts or that hurts. Like, that relationship helps me. First off, helps them come up to me and trust me, but also helps me know that what they're saying to me is real. and not just a number on a data sheet, and that we need to adjust things. So you can't take out the human element of training.
And as coaches, like we as strength coaches, we oftentimes don't dictate lineups or rosters or how much somebody plays during the game, right? So we're going to get a lot more of the armchair psychologists than their head coach or their bench coach would get. They're going to come and voice their opinions and their struggles and what's hard to them a lot more than they're going to do to their manager. And understanding that that's all a part of building the relationship. Like the only reason they're doing that is because they're comfortable doing it with you. Otherwise, they wouldn't be voicing their frustrations to you.
Yes, sir.
What number are we on? 6?
6.
All right. Here's one. Being 2 steps ahead or thinking 2 steps ahead. So many times people are reactive to what's happening. I like to have the fail safe of, okay, well, I'm going to set this up in a position where this guy doesn't even know I'm setting the iPad that has his velocity-based training measurements from the ground to more of a eyesight level. That way I know when they go through their squats, they're not going to be like ratcheting their neck back or looking down as they're going through something. They might not even be conscious of me moving that stuff and setting it up in positions or grabbing the dumbbells and putting them where they need to be or putting the hurdles where they need to be or the box. Like just set things up for people because you know what they're going to need. They're probably not going to notice, and that's okay, but get them to where they need to be without them even realizing that you're shuttling them to where they need to be.
Yeah. I mean, I think also another piece of that is don't be like too proud to like set up or break down or clean up fucking equipment. Like, I know we don't all want to do that, but again, this is the industry that you're in. And when people come in on my side of things with the private sector, if they're coming in, they have 1 fucking hour and that's it. So I can spend some time setting shit up so they don't have to waste part of that hour setting shit or breaking stuff down. I get it when you have like young athletes come through and you're trying to teach them that kind of stuff, right? On how to like stay organized, where things should be. But once you have that like ingrained, they might help you along the way. You know, as the class is going, like you were saying, or as the training session is going, like as a coach, you should be helping that flow move by, like you said, cleaning up the dumbbells, putting the boxes where they should be before you've even told them what's going on. So yeah, that's a good one.
Also realizing like they're going to say, most people, when you do something for them, are going to say like, thank you for like doing this for me. It's like, hey, you're the one here doing the work. Like, I'm just here to help. Like, putting the acknowledgement on them for actually showing up and doing the work. Like, we're just there to do our jobs, essentially.
I'm just a guy.
A lot of times, like, our jobs are thankless, and that's okay. Like, we don't need to be the center of attention.
Oh, thank you, Ryan. I just wanted to thank you from that. Those were my top 3. I don't know. I think I took one of yours. I don't know if you had another one.
That was all I had.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think those are all good points. I mean, we could probably talk about this for way longer than a half hour. But I think if you're a young coach and you're hitting all 6 of those things, or at least like conscious about those things and getting better at them, and knowing you're not going to be excellent at all those things right away, just being conscious of those things is going to make you a better coach overall, because you're going to know that, you're going to know that I need to communicate better with this person, or I need to make sure I'm setting stuff up appropriately or think ahead appropriately or whatever it might be. So I think that's a big piece of it too. So hopefully take all those things with a grain of salt, start incorporating them a little bit in your coaching, and hopefully that helps overall.
Yeah, and if not, it's Brett's fault.
That makes sense. Cool. Well, hopefully you guys liked that one. If you did, like and share, and we will see you next time.
Now it's just me. See, look, Brett leaves and I'm the only one left.